Hi Mumfessionals, welcome to another episode of Mum Talks. Today we're going to be talking about how to raise or rather set up your kids for success. We have with us Shazia Ashfaq. She is a master's in public health. She is the co-founder of Reflect.Ed, which is an independent educational consultancy. And she's also an associate consultant with the IRD, which is the Interactive Research and Development. Hi Shazia.
Hi Alia, how are you?
Thank you for being with us, and I'm good, thanks. So Shazia, let's talk about raising successful kids or setting them up for success. Now let's talk a little bit about your master's in public health. Then IRD is, what is IRD?
They're basically a not-for-profit that works in conjunction with public hospitals and some private ones and runs programs to take care of people's health. While I have been at IRD, I have been responsible for, we have approximately 16 young people who are applying for their graduate degrees every year and sort of shepherding them through the process of telling their complete story in a very cohesive, tight manner to the schools that they're applying to. And they have managed to get entrance to any school they have applied to.
Now let's define success. When we say setting up our kids for success, what does success mean? Because there's a lot of conversation around the term success as well.
As South Asian parents, we tend to very strongly involve ourselves in what we think that our children should do and what they should follow, what path they should follow. I'm of the belief that
I'll interrupt you there. Isn't that rightfully so? Because the kids are so impressionable and they're sort of all over the place. So as parents, I feel that we also need to kind of help guide them, right?
That's absolutely true when they're very young. I think the young kids that I work with now are generally 16 and above. So they have gone through, they're entering young adulthood. They sort of know what they like and they don't like. And with the tools that are at my disposal, I can really find what is of interest to them and also what they would be good at. And then somehow help them marry the two.
So Shazia, that's useful to know that there are people like yourselves who can help sort of guide our children find what really they want to do in life and then sort of work backwards and so that's incredible. Now tell me something. I have my eldest is in 8th grade. So how early does one start planning for colleges?
So I would say that you're almost at the cusp of being there. Colleges, by and large, in North America as well as in other countries, look at your child's grades from 9th grade onwards. So any extracurriculars that your child is involved in start counting from 9th grade onwards. Okay? So whether it's music, whether it's drama, whether it's sports, whether it's community service, whatever it is that your child is passionate about and is interested in, they need to actually be involved in it from 9th all the way through the end of high school.
So one of the things that I've heard about all these years since I become a parent, that the kids to get into good colleges, they must have one sport under their belt. They need to learn one instrument and be good at it. Academically, of course, they should have like spectacular grades. They should be part of community service. So now, is that true? Do you really need all these things under your belt for your college application?
So the answer to that is yes and no. Okay. Your child can only continue to participate in a sport or a musical instrument if they're passionate about it. They have to identify what they're passionate about. Sometimes
Can the sport be gaming?
Yes, it can.
Really?
It actually can.
Okay.
However, what colleges look at is depth of involvement, not just breadth of involvement. So the thing used to be that you used to hit almost everything you possibly could for at least 1 year. So in 9th grade, you did something else. In 10th grade, you did debate and football. In 11th grade, you decided, well, I don't want to do debate this year, so I'll do football and I'll take up guitar. And then in A1, you said, okay, well, I don't want to do any of those things and I'm going to do something completely different. That model doesn't work at all. Colleges want to see that if you are playing a sport, for instance, if your child must be participating in the Sindh Open, possibly, it seems to be the thing to do in Karachi.
Which is why I ask these questions, because my kids are, they do sports for fun, but they're not like competitive in it, it's just for fun.
And that's perfectly fine. So for instance, if your child is swimming and enjoys swimming and continues to participate in swimming events, whether at school or at the club, or is good enough to participate in the Sindh Open, if you can craft a story about what the child learned from that sport, and there are definite qualities that you can talk about. What kind of story does that weave about your student, and how else they've applied the skills that they've learned in other aspects of that life, of their life, that tells a convincing story. Sometimes counselors will help students heavily in writing their story. I find that your child has to be invested in what they believe are their strengths, what they've learned in their high school career so far, and to instill in them that sense of confidence that they can talk about their story. They can go into an interview with a college representative or an alumni and be completely confident about what they know about themselves to be true.
So, Shazia, all of this, I know that I can be a stressed out parent. I know that a lot of people around me are also stressed out. And obviously that stress is going, and we're translating that stress and, giving it to our kids as well. How do you manage, or how can, as parents, we manage that stress so that the kids don't kind of lose the plot before they even get to college?
So let's talk a little bit about how to reduce stress and how to set up your students for academic success in middle school. By the time I start talking to students, I was working as a part-time counselor at one of our local schools, and the 11th graders were supremely stressed. Some of the things that sort of came up in the process of conversations over that time period is that they don't have enough time. They find that they actually can't focus on studying, and that overall they don't know how to manage these things. So I realized that 11th grade is too late to start to teach them the skills that will set them up for academic success. So some of the things that I've tried to teach my own child, who's now in 9th grade,
okay,
so we're right there, is effective note-taking, active listening, and also setting up a calendar. So I think it's important in many aspects to incorporate all three of these things for them to understand how to manage their time effectively, how to manage their day effectively, and not to lose out on what's going on. Because not only does she have school, she also has extracurricular activities, she has sports, she has other interests. She wants to be able to fit everything in and not lose out a moment. She would give up her sleep in order to do other things, right? So
I want her. I want this child.
So one of the techniques I've been trying to teach her, and I think is extremely effective, is the Cornell method of note-taking. It builds in within the note-taking setup your notes, some keywords that you put on the left-hand side of the page, and at the bottom of the page there's enough space for 2 or 3 summary lines. So if you are in your regular classroom, if you just set yourself up to take notes within that top center 2/3 of the page, and at the end of the period or at the end of the day when you go home, you look through, highlight the however many keywords, 5, 6, 7, and write 2 lines of a summary, you've basically you've reread your notes.
That's an excellent tip.
And you've identified what was on that page because you wrote a summary. So when I have to come back to one of 10 subjects and have to learn a whole lot of information for a midterm exam or a final exam or a mock or whatever, I already know what's on that page. And if I need to remember it, I can go back and look at the section I need to memorize, instead of having a stack of notes this big for every subject and not knowing where to start and feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. The second thing that and I find that some students do it on their own and some sort of have to be prompted and helped, is that pre-reading. You have to pre-read what's going to come in tomorrow's class or what's going to come in the next week and read for it and prepare for it beforehand, so that when you're doing the Cornell method of note-taking, you're already like halfway there. When the teacher starts talking, you already know what the information was, you already connect with it, and you can be proactive in the classroom. You can raise your hand, you can give insightful comments, because in the process of reading and in listening to what's happening, your brain is already working and you already know how to participate. And that's the beauty of it. How does that help you? Your teacher knows you then, understands you, realizes you're paying attention, and will give you more attention in return, which pays dividends down the line, because these same teachers might be the ones who are going to write you recommendations for your college applications. So a little work now leads to dividends later.
Nice, nice. Okay, so we've talked about active note-taking, active reading. What's the third thing?
The third thing is setting up a calendar for yourself. So it's important to print up at least 3 months, if not an entire annual calendar, and help your student put down all the important dates, which is not just the dates of the holidays. Okay? So you want to know when test weeks are, you want to know when exams are coming up. You also want to put in important things like weddings and family vacations and all the other paraphernalia that comes up in everyday life. So when they are looking at, say, a test that's coming up in 3 weeks, and they think, I have plenty of time to study for that. But the reality is that every weekend there's something going on, or they have a sports event, or they have a debate event at school, or something else is going on, and they actually won't be able to put any time aside to study for that test until the night before, which leads to an increased level of stress for them. So helping them calendar out all the due dates and deliverables the same way that we would do if we were working, pretty much, helps them set up themselves up for success through high school and beyond.
I think I'm going to use this technique for myself also. You know.
Now let's talk about the financial aspect of college, right? Or any other concerns that maybe I haven't thought of and you've seen in your experience with working all the parents.
So I
While
think
they're applying
financial concerns are obviously present for almost everybody, and
especially with the devaluation where it is right now. So 5 years from now, when my kid is ready, I don't know what I'll do.
So I think one of the first things we have to really think about is what kinds of financial aid or what kinds of scholarships will be available to our students in the universities that they'll be applying for. Or if there is a particular country that you are thinking that your child might go to, especially if you have citizenship in another country, you actively want to start thinking about how much you should be putting aside now, and as well as what opportunities there are.
I'll pause you over here. So when you say putting aside right now, is this like you just start saving in whatever currency that you're going to be using, be it Pakistani currency, or if you're sending your child outside of Pakistan in like a savings account, or are we looking at like investments that we should be making?
I think that question can be answered individually and is a very individual and a personal consideration for each family, based on how much they can afford to spend or what they're really thinking about. And so any parent with a student in 9th, 10th, or 11th is thinking about these things. And I'm sure they are talking to financial professionals better than myself to guide them on what they need to do.
Because
this should definitely be discussed.
About the net present value. So, so I keep thinking about what is the right instrument. And sometimes I just feel that, you know what, just put it in the bank, leave it there, and don't think about it too much, because you also don't want to be stuck with asset that you will not be able to liquidate easily later on when you need to.
Sure. And I think these are absolutely valid concerns, and a financial professional will definitely guide you with that. Okay. What I can tell you is for each student is what are the worth of merit scholarships that will probably be present in the universities they are thinking about applying to, and overall the general value of those. And then you can think about how to finance the rest of it. Any other concerns? Really, I think the portfolio for each student is so varied and so different, and their needs may be completely different. A student applying for an architectural program may have very different needs and will require a very different portfolio than someone who's going to apply for an engineering program. And then that changes with the things that they're very interested in. For example, gaming would be definitely applicable to someone applying for an engineering program. And we can talk a little bit more when your student is at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Shazia, we've covered some really important points, and I know most parents are thinking about it. So before we finish off, any words of wisdom, thoughts that you'd like to share before we end?
I think parents sometimes wait too long to talk to a counselor, and I think earlier is better. You don't want to get into A1 and then find out, oops, I should not have done that. So it's better to talk to someone now. It's also generally easier to talk to someone and have a half-hour conversation about your child, and for them to assess your child and to see what their strengths and weaknesses are, and sort of give you sort of a little bit of guidance on what direction you want to sort of head them towards. If they've already identified a passion, how to help them grow that passion and how to help them stick to it in the long term. Sometimes, like you said before, our students and our children tend to sort of want to leave things because they get bored with them, and those are hard conversations to have. But sometimes they may be necessary for you, especially if you're thinking about depth of involvement in a certain area, whether it's sports or whether it's music or drama or debate or anything else. So we sort of, those conversations are best had sometimes with an outsider who can then talk to you and your child about what is the best way forward. So that's what I will leave you with.
Okay, thank you so much
for taking out the time and sharing all these important points with us. Mumfessionals, I hope you enjoyed that session. Do write to us, send us your feedback so that we know what you're thinking. And if you would like to share your personal stories, please write in. Thank you. Bye.